Okay, let's start all over. All right, so we're meeting today as the School Health Advisory Council, April 27th. And you should have, for those who are in person with us today, you should have two handouts in front of you. You should have a meeting agenda, and then you should have minutes from our last month's meeting. And then there's a sign-in sheet here at the table, as well as some other handouts that Ms. Brock will get to momentarily. So I am going to call the meeting to order. And as you can see, we do have one Zoom attendee, Ms. O'Brien. And your handout for the minutes, we're going to, if you had a chance to look over them before you came in, or you want to look at them now, I would appreciate it, because we need to get an approval of the minutes as well as a motion to second it. So if you look at the minutes, you will see a lot of familiar content from last month's agenda. So because I made the agenda so detailed last month, I just kind of copied and pasted a good majority of it to our minutes. And that was mostly the human sexuality education curriculum portion. So a lot of that will look familiar to you. And I'll give you guys just a couple minutes to look over the handout. It should be front back 2 pages.
I move that we approve the minutes from the previous meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Reese. And I'm sorry, who's second? Josh. Thank you. Okay, and I think according to Robert's Rules of Order, anything up for discussion, amendments, additions to the minutes? Okay, there's no opposing comments, so we'll accept the minutes for March 23rd. And just as a friendly reminder, the minutes for each meeting and the agendas for each meeting will be put online on the district website. So if you ever need to look back at anything that we've discussed, you can certainly, if you don't keep your hard copies with you, you can look back online. And then just as an aside, this is kind of my administrator part of me. I actually have a SHAC binder. And so that's kind of nice to be able to keep all your documents in that one binder. So if you need to flip back to any sort of discussions that you need answers to, then certainly you can do that. All right, so our next topic, I want to just real quickly go over how we will be structuring our meetings and the sort of template. I touched on this a little bit at our last meeting, but as you know, SHAC is an advisory board. We make recommendations to the school board. So for those of you that are new to SHAC, and our group consists of members from the community, so that could be parents, the Walker County State Health Department. Sometimes we have representatives from Tri-County Behavioral Health Care, and then obviously members of our school district or staff. So we do comprise different areas of the community and the school district. And our job is to make sure that the school district's school health programs reflect community values, so reflect y'all's values. So that's why we seek y'all's approval and recommendations, obviously. And we perform that role as a group using the coordinated school health program model. So that's in your agenda. And this model does consist of these 8 interactive components that I've listed for you. And the way that I'd like to go forward with our meetings is to take these 8 components and to intersperse along with the sort of umbrella of the 8 components, our reports or our discussions. So that's kind of how we'll focus on that. So just to give you an idea of what our content will be for today is the first bullet, family community involvement. We're going to talk about the Health and Safety Summit, go over the human sexuality education curriculum. Mr. Reese will give us a report on the School Safety and Security Committee. And at times, not today, but at times we might ask Christina and Kim from the Health Department to talk about any kind of immunization education that they have, that they're involved with our district and the community or with families. They also set up mobile clinics, and there's a handout here on the table for the next mobile clinic, which will be at the immunization mobile clinic, which will be at the New Waverly Library. Health education, the next bullet is pretty self-explanatory, but of course that will still include our report from the summit and the curriculum that we'll review today. Physical education might involve the next go around some of our PE coaches or anything that's going on with athletics. Currently, I know some of the coaches are involved in completing their fitness grams on their students, so that would be a point of discussion at some point. Health services would be information from the clinic standpoint. So the 4 clinics that are in our district, we might give reports on that. Again, for today, that would be the Health and Safety Summit. At the elementary campus, we are looking at dental education. And technically, dental month was February, but we're running a little behind. But we do have dental baggies that we will be providing for our elementary students. And myself and Ms. Spiegel, who's the clinic assistant at the elementary, we will be doing dental education in the next, before school's out. So we've got about a month or so, a little bit less than a month, and we'll get that started. Nutrition services, I know Ms. Gregory's our nutrition services director is not here today, but I have asked her in the past to introduce herself and to give an overview of what her role is and what the role of our cafeteria staff is in terms of how they select, because they're all bound by federal guidelines, so it gets very intricate what her job entails. So counseling, psychological, and social services, again, we'll address some sessions that were given at the Health and Safety Summit. We may, from time to time, maybe ask a counselor if there's an issue that, they want to bring before the committee, and that would be, again, another point of discussion. Healthy school environment, that would include our school resource officers, Mike and Casey, who are here today, and I've asked Mike to do a brief report as well. The School Safety and Security Committee, and then health promotion for staff, and that might be examples of different wellness activities. We've done, it's called, I think, Walk Across Texas. We've done that in the past before with staff where they've logged in steps. And then we also would look at maybe highlighting monthly national health observances in this area. Like my future goal would be to try to carve out time to pick something each month. Let's say it's Dental Health Month, and maybe do a display or come to a faculty meeting and talk to the staff about that, or a display in the teacher's lounge. So that's kind of an ultimate goal that I'd like to look forward to. For instance, April is Stress Awareness Month. So we all go through that, and especially in the school district as we're trying to close out the year, that would be a good one to highlight. As SHAC members, you guys can also suggest agenda items. So please feel free to message me and let me know, or at the end of the meeting, or bring up ideas during the meeting. And we always appreciate that input. So, if you have anything related to health and safety, would love to have you added onto the agenda. As we know, sort of my mantra and my clinic staff is that we know healthy students learn better. So when they're healthy, they're going to be at school, they're going to perform for our classroom educators, and just overall they're going to, be more motivated. So that's our goal, as SHAC, so that we can help reflect those values and be good role models for not only our students, but our staff also. So our next bullet is human sexuality education. And so we've got a couple of things on tap for you guys today in terms of our discussion. And what Ms. Brock and I want to bring to you guys is that last week we kind of introduced the role of SHAC in terms of recommending human sexuality education curriculum for the district. So again, as a reminder, it is House Bill 1425, I believe. 15, okay. So we have been tasked by the state to implement some sort of curriculum that aligns with the TEKS. So this is a Texas Essential Knowledge, for those of you who aren't familiar with TEKS, Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills. And the TEKS fall within the curriculum for the classroom, and these are just different. And I'll let Ms. Brock speak a little bit more to that because she's more of the expert in that area. But we have to be able to align out whatever curriculum we are recommending to the board. If that's the case, then we have to align that with what's included in the TEKS. Now, as Ms. Brock and I have discussed multiple times, there's a little bit of a gray area that we are trying to determine, what TEA is asking of us. So in theory, what we are looking at is each SHAC group for each public school district reviews different types of curriculum regarding sexual education. And the curriculum can be comprised of either the State Board of Education has approved a textbook, which Ms. Brock is going to give you guys an idea of that, approved a textbook, and we can use the textbook if that's what you guys would recommend. And then whatever is in the textbook, certain teachers would be trained, and then you would implement that in the classroom, whether it's throughout the year or certain times of the year. And that would be how we would push out that portion of the curriculum. Or as we reviewed last week, we've got several vendors in the state that are offering sort of a one-stop, very convenient in and out. They'd come in for a few days, present the curriculum based on grade level, and we're going to go over some of those handouts that I provided for y'all last month to see what you guys would think would be appropriate, or what you can manage, especially for the teachers in here, what you can manage in the classroom. And that curriculum review, just briefly, is on your agenda. It was the Goodhart Wilcox textbook, and then Choosing the Best. Choosing the Best is actually teacher-led, so they do not have a group that comes in to do the actual teaching, but they do provide you with the curriculum. Just Say Yes and 180 Degrees, that would be an outside person coming in to implement it for maybe a 3-day session, depending on, how many students. We are looking at the curriculum for sure being, again, if it's approved, implemented in junior high. It's an elective in high school, and then maybe 5th grade at intermediate. So now we want to talk about sort of the implementation, and if you guys can kind of grasp your heads around what we want to implement. The board hasn't approved anything yet. Obviously they're waiting on us, but should the board decide, and tell me if I'm using the right language, Ms. Brock, should they, that they just have the final decision in terms of what we do. We can give them our recommendations, and then at that point, it's kind of left up to them for the most part.
Right. Yeah. So these new TEKS are supposed to go into effect starting August of this year. In those TEKS, there always have been like sex education components, but schools have had the option to not have a sex education curriculum. However, now it is worded in a way that we believe that whatever is in the TEKS, including the the sex education piece, that we will have to adopt a curriculum that parents would have to opt into for their students. There is still some very gray lines. Like I've reached out to Region 6, and looked at TEA and other school districts, and nobody can definitely say that, yes, you have to teach or have to offer sex education curriculum, because everybody has a different interpretation of what TEA is saying. In Region 6, the last thing they said is that before anything is done in the classroom, you need to wait for guidance from TEA. And the only guidance from TEA is that the TEKS will go into effect this school year. And the TEKS include, so it's very confusing. So as a SHAC committee, what we are asking is that we are going to go ahead and try to get as much done as we can get done, to then find out what TEA is actually going to do, to then give the board the power to decide, if they have the power to decide, if we are or are not going to offer sex education curriculum. And if they decide that we are going to offer sex education curriculum, to take the recommendation of the SHAC committee of what curriculum to present to the parents for them to have the opportunity to opt in. Everything for sex education is opt in that sense. Does that make sense? So I thought before we even make a decision on like what type of curriculum that we do, I thought maybe we just need to touch base or give you a chance to look at what the sex education TEKS are. So, that's not the best, and I didn't make a ton of copies because I didn't know how many. So I'm going to put a couple of copies for each grade level on each table, and you can look. So it's broken down, like there's 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, and then 7, 8. Can I give us 7, 8? 7, 8 is put together. I don't know why. They are. And some of it can get a little bit dicey as far as my professional opinion, in giving the teachers the responsibility of having to teach certain topics like healthy relationships. It talks about like healthy marriages. And just to be real honest, healthy marriages are kind of hard to define. And people's opinions and what they think, and that can be a little different and can probably lead to some very interesting conversations, to say the least. So these are not high school. So you can look at the top. So this is 6. It's at 7 to 8. So you just kind of look, and I'll pull them up here.
Stephanie, I have a couple things I'd like to say.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I was looking over what you guys proposed and looking at reviews on them.
Yes.
And there's a lot of negative reviews. And apparently, if it's abstinence-based, the government federally funds it. But if we choose to do a different route, they won't. I did find a free program that teachers would implement instead of a textbook or bringing someone in that would be free. So I feel like we kind of need to think about other options besides abstinence, because there's been studies showing that it's not working. They are still doing things.
And so we have to follow what the TEKS say. So that's what we're bound by. And so it is like an abstinence-based curriculum. It's more of a prevention, just educational, not as far, that's where the school would have to stand. And that's why I wanted to show you what the TEKS were, because that's what we are bound to. I'm showing it up there. I don't know if everybody else can see it. But we're like starting right here. This particular strand is called reproductive and sexual health. And this one is healthy relationships. And this is the one for 6th grade. So you can kind of see it has different, definitions for relationships, characteristics of healthy dating, romantic relationships, marriage, all that kind of thing. And then, it gets into healthy relationships. That can be very difficult within itself. Then we get into some like sexual harassment, some different forms of abuse, sex trafficking, harmful relationships, controlling, manipulation, isolation. And as you can imagine, like while these things sound easy that they can just be presented one time, those are going to bring up conversations within the classroom themselves that are going to be very, very complex. And I don't know if teachers are necessary, if we even have the time to train teachers to be skilled in managing all of those things, nor do our counselors have the time to be able to teach all of these lessons to all of our students. So we need to find a creative way. Healthy sense of self, communication, refusal skills. Like there's part that's anatomy and reproduction. A lot of those pieces are already taught in our science curriculum to a certain extent. I'm talking about hormones and just how human reproduction. Okay, then here we define abstinence and refraining from all forms of sexual activity and genital contact. And then we start talking about how to abstain from sexual activity. Okay, then I want to show the 7th and 8th grade. They're basically pretty much the same teaks. They do go in a little bit more in depth in 7th and 8th grade. But what are your thoughts so far just on the teaks themselves and them being taught? Like if you had a choice and you said, as a district, we want to have sex education offered to our students, or no, we do not. If that's an option, what are your thoughts?
You should have it. They should have it. Kids should know.
Okay.
And I think it's important, sorry, my name is Jessica, to remember that the abstinence is applying to the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, which I think we all agree they shouldn't be sexually active, right?
Right.
So it's not high school. And I was thinking about what you said too, and I was like, oh yeah, this isn't mandatory for high school, right? It's just 6th, 7th, and 8th.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
So that must be why it's, you know what I mean?
yes.
Yeah.
Right, because health is an elective at the high school, and right now we
Yeah.
don't have a health elective
Yeah.
that's offered.
So that's why it's so abstinence heavy, I would think.
Mm-hmm. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that? Like if they're like, do you think that we should we not? Because that's going to be a board question. Yes, sir.
We've been riding the fence for a long, long time. So if it's not mandatory, well, it's going to be a very, very hot topic out in the community. So if it's not mandated by the state, because you're going to have lots and lots and lots of different opinions on it. I don't know if you want to cross that bridge. It's kind of everybody's opinion. I'm like, if it's not mandated by the state, continue on doing it. But that's just.
And I'm not opposed to doing the work and informing the community if we think that it's best for our kids. Because if we adopt a curriculum before we even present it to the board adopts it, that has to be put out for the public to review. We have to set up meetings for parents to be able to come and review the material and question that even before it could be adopted. So I guess my thought on that is like, okay, if we really think that's what is best, then whatever opposition we get, that just comes along with whatever we think is best. But if we think that it's not best for our students, then for sure, yeah.
Some of this stuff in here is not just sex ed. It has a lot of other good points about bullying and disinformation and self-care and hygiene and everything else. So there's a lot of good that comes out of this other than just sex ed. So that might be good spin, good turn point on it.
Right.
Because in my opinion, if something's going to happen, they're going to do something, they're not going to, they're not going to pay attention, they're going to do it.
And some of these things we already cover, honestly, like when we do the health and safety summit, like the sex trafficking, and as far as like the sexual assault and what the ramifications are, we already do that. We don't necessarily have a set curriculum. So that's this is the part where we have to decide, okay, if we are going to do it, then what do we use and how do we present that to our students?
I'm not a teacher, so I don't know, but it does seem like it would be easier to have someone come in that's like how you're saying some of this stuff's hard to talk about, like that's trained in those discussions. And then, I mean, I know it costs money, but then it would also cost money to train the teachers to be able to do it too, right? But you'd have someone come in and they would just knock it out in a day or two.
Yes. And so we have like an online, I don't know if anybody had a chance to log on to the textbook and look at it. I did. That's been several weeks ago. Just to be honest, I can't really remember what I read or saw. I do remember, though, a feeling that I got as I was looking through that, and it was kind of the feeling of, oh, wow, that is in writing, and it is here, and it's not like a one-time conversation. It's here.
And this is the only State Board of Education approved.
Yes, and then I requested some samples, and they gave me some samples, but this is not the same thing that I logged on to. It doesn't have the same material, so I'm not quite sure what the disconnect is, because there's a part about healthy relationships in here that's very vague, and this is middle school. But the part that I read online, it was a little bit more in depth, that it made me feel a little bit uncomfortable in sharing that with students in a way that it was in a textbook form and a teacher was going to be the one presenting that. So I'll have to do some following up on the textbook piece. I don't know exactly where we want to go from here. So what I'm getting now is like, if there is an option and we say yes, we can or can't, the feeling that I'm getting is that we would like to pursue the idea of having some type of sex ed curriculum. Is that?
I think they have to get ahead of it.
Okay.
Okay, because it looks like that's what the state's going to push. Anyway, so having the groundwork done.
Right.
Okay. Versus trying to catch up.
Having taught fifth grade science and health for years, a lot of this stuff is already things that we discuss. We talk about healthy relationships and what that looks like. My opinion would be, I don't mind teaching, it seems like what they have in here, as long as they don't start adding a whole bunch of other stuff. But I would like it to be where I would have my young ladies and my young men separated to be able to talk about some of these topics when it's the sexually related stuff. Yeah, I can't even say the word like steel ball in class without giggles erupting.
Oh my God, boy.
You know, we're talking about seeds and nuts, and it's just
Oh, no.
they're at that age where, and I'm like, we're not doing this with boy and girl together. I feel like I could talk more freely with them and have a better conversation. Just this. You know, I think they would feel more comfortable.
Would you rather teach it or have someone?
Yes, that's my question.
But my thing with having someone come in and do it is like we control the sounding board, like we control the dialogue more because you can heavily vet them. And then we sit in, someone sets in, so there's no confusion about what's taught. No one's going home saying, well, Ms. Piper said this, well, Mr. Beasley said this. Well, it's like, no, we know what was that. Like there's one discussion. Right. So that's maybe the only, that's a good, but I don't know what y'all.
No, I mean, as far as the sex ed part, I would prefer that, yeah.
But I feel
I
like
would do it,
that's
but I
more
would
of the
prefer it to
professional
be.
than conditions that might come out, or personal experiences that you would not have.
You're asking,
I can't answer a lot of questions, and I'm getting those questions.
Are you saying, do we want to, the district, do we want to pay someone to come talk to kids about sex?
Correct.
Why would we do that?
Instead of us doing it.
So the only part that, like, so we could take these teaks even, and different people within the district, different roles could educate our students about them.
Yeah, listen, what I've done the last few years, I guess about 8 years ago, I had a 4th grade girl, her parents came in and she was sending naked pictures to kids in the Woodlands. So it kind of triggered me to, man, these girls really need to do this. So I started talking to the 7th, 8th, or 7th through 12th grade boys and girls separately. And what I would do is when I speak to the girls here in athletics, I'll get all the 7th grade girls with all the girl coaches, and we'll get to gym, and then we have a great conversation about, we don't talk about sex, we just talk about it's your body, you're special, blah, blah. And I mean, girls ever cry, it's very serious and very, I realize I do it because it's in the realm of athletics. I would love to do it for 6th grade and 5th grade. So the stuff that we talk about, and I even have parents, tell me a couple of times, man, what you said it was so powerful. And I mean, it's the truth. You're such a special person, boys and girls, and boys, if you could call me down on your phone and treat girls with respect, blah, blah, blah. So I think it's, when I've spoken to the kids, the 7th through 12th grade, it's been very, very powerful. Now, that doesn't mean they're not going to go off that weekend and do what they want to do, but you know what? It planted a seed. So I think
they would take that more serious, coming from somebody they know.
yeah, versus somebody that's from San Antonio that like when we have in-services, they're great. But
Right, they may pick up 1 or 2 things, but if it's coming from somebody that they built a
They trust.
relationship with and that they trust, I would have wanted my kids to have that
And I
talk
think
with.
the one other positive there is because you've had a longer time with this one student, if you say something, you bring up the curriculum and say this, let me tell you talk about it. And 3 days later, they have a question.
Right.
There's no way to ask a presenter 3 days later. And yes, they can sure, obviously, they can follow up with the anyway, but it's just, I think there's a continuity. That's what I would say.
and I would love to volunteer to,
Signed up.
I mean, I mean, listen, I think it's freaking important. It's real important. When a 4th grade girl comes to me and her parents said that she showed a picture of her without a bra, that's 4th grade. So me talking to 7th grade, it's 3 years too late on.
Okay, so the only curriculum that is approved, the only textbook curriculum that is approved is this one that I do have some samples of. Like I said, it's not exactly what I saw online, and I tried to access it online, and I don't know if our demo password has expired or what, but I couldn't get in, so that's why I went and got the books. But we can definitely look at that, and it doesn't go to say that just because, but textbooks are always just a resource, and you don't have to use everything that is in there, but we do have to adopt something. We can't just say, yes, we're going to have a sex education curriculum and we're just going to teach whatever we want. We have to have some type of curriculum that's a guide that is going to be guiding us in that. So.
And there's, as Stephanie and I talked about again many times, there's pros and cons with having the classroom teacher implement the content within the classroom. So, and as you can imagine, there's lots of logistical. If a parent doesn't opt in, then you've got a percentage of students. What are you going to do with them during that time period? You're going to take them to the library. I mean, there's a lot of logistical things with both whatever way we decide to go, and then there's some benefits of bringing someone in because it's over and done with. The teacher's got a lot going on and to have to add one more thing to their plate. But again, we are just trying to bring in both sides to let you guys, and I appreciate this is a lot of good discussion to get everyone's point of view.
Coach Shaw and from Ms. Clyber, what I'm piecing together is that the pieces that you already teach, those are covered, but there are some things that maybe we don't teach in the classroom, and those would be almost like special setup sessions that we do, boys and girls, or in athletics, boys and girls, and then we cover those topics at those times. It doesn't necessarily have to be in a classroom setting just because the teacher is going to do it or the school is going to provide instruction. It can be through like a seminar or a health and safety summit, that's one of the rotations. So we can do that too. So this is really good feedback to get from other people. Okay, so Ms. Roberts, do you have what you need for us to then move forward on our part?
Would we like to show them the different outside vendor curriculum, or have we decided it's going to be within.
I think the decision, what I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, is that the outside vendor coming in is not something that we're, as a committee, are interested in, that if you would rather it would be locally.
Sure.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct. And that's always safe for audit purposes. If you have something that is adopted by TEA and you follow that, even if like what Ms. Cliver said, she might have a topic and she will personalize it by separating them out. But as long as we stick by the TEACs and a state adopted textbook, then we don't run the risk on having a problem with a parent because we bring someone in and they say something that they shouldn't say.
That's a good point. Okay, so locally taught, the state adopted textbook. And so now what we will do, so the board, they passed a resolution that gave the SHAC committee the authority to recommend a curriculum. So at the next board meeting, what we will do is we'll take this to the board and let them know that the discussion that we had and that the curriculum, the state adopted textbook, that's the curriculum that we as a SHAC committee are recommending. They will review it, and then if they think that is good, then we have to put that out for the parents to give them opportunities to review it and ask questions and put it out there. So that will be the next step. Thank you.
Thank you.
You need to put anything else up here at this time?
I don't think so. I mean, since we're not going to go that either route. Okay, thank y'all for the discussion. That's really great, and I appreciate everyone's input and just your passion for our students and what we present to them. So we're going to move on to the Health and Safety Summit. So it was held at the high school on April 14th, so that was approximately 2 weeks ago. And just to give you guys a rundown of the summit, and I'll also get, since we do have 2 of our high school staff here, we can get some feedback from them as well. Just to give you an overview again, a reminder of how it was structured. We had 13 sessions or 13 presenters / topics that were offered, and we rotated grades, students in grades 9 through 12 through 7 of those 13 sessions. We aligned it with the 7 class periods. As you can tell, slight drawback to that is they didn't get to hear all 13, but we hope that by offering it on an every other year basis, like next year we'll rotate to junior high and then the following year back to high school, that they would all eventually hear all of the topics, because we do try to stick with the same topics from year to year. And then hopefully by graduation, they would have heard, and maybe heard it several times, the topics. And we also looked at, I'm not sure if I talked about this last time, we looked at offering like 2 speakers per 1 topic, but that's a real hard thing to do, because unless these 2 speakers work together, you're going to get different presentations. It's kind of like the curriculum, right? You're just going to get different thoughts on how to present it. And we wanted the same message to be given to all of our students. So that's why we opted to have just 1 vaping session, 1 dating violence session. So if that makes sense. I felt like I got a lot of good sort of feedback, a lot of positive remarks. I think human trafficking was one of the more popular ones, which I was really pleased to hear that, because this was the first year that we offered it, and got a lot of good response from students and staff on that. We just, I just had a lot of good feedback, which I really appreciated. And we did have, some negatives. With any kind of event you put together, you're going to have that. So I took that to, improve for next year. So I did ask Josh to just, again, to give you guys, for those of you who aren't familiar with a safety summit and how it's structured, to give sort of an overview of what he talked about in his session. We titled it Recreational Safety because he did talk about boater safety, ATV safety, and I believe maybe hiking may or may not have been part of that. We had discussed that early on. And then I thought if he could go over a little bit of that with y'all, and then I'll let, if Ms. Hirsch and Ms. Gathright are comfortable giving sort of their thoughts on how the day went, we'll move to them. So, yeah.
I'll stand up here real quick. Just for time, I'm just going to kind of summarize everything. Just want to tell everyone, thank you all for being a part, everybody going out and getting donations. It went very, very well. Everybody's aspect, the people that we talked to, the presenters, when we were in the break room and everything, it seemed like everything was real positive. The kids seemed like they had some fun, but they were also, kind of getting a lot of different things thrown at them all the time, which is good. They need to hear everything. Just from a personal standpoint, whenever I went to Houston Fire Department, I was over here secluded in this town and didn't really know a whole lot about a lot of anything. A lot of stuff that we get thrown at us that we presented out here, especially one thing in the drugs. I think the constables and the sheriff's when we brought it out there. I went all the way to paramedic school and got out one of my first calls was somebody's having a heart attack, and they're like, "Well, what's going on?" And like, I did crack last night. Like, it's sitting right there, and I had no idea, even know what it looked like, to know that somebody actually. I was like, "You didn't really do crack?" I was like, "Yeah, it did. It's right there." I'm like, "Okay." And my preceptor was like, "All right, get over that slide. Keep going." So he did. He was having an MI and everything else. We treated him appropriately and everything, but that's the stuff that we didn't get introduced to years ago. And so this is bringing that kind of stuff. At least they know what to say no to. So whenever they didn't know what to say no, so, or some of the stuff. But in our presentation as a fire department, we went over ATV and boater safety and some stuff about loss of the national forest. We have 188,000 acres out here that people go hiking in and come up and we make about 12 or 14 rescues every year that we go out there and we find people. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. Before people go out there, the battery's going to be charged on their cell phones because we can get GPS. Dispatch can show them how to do that. That will be fine. We'll take a drone out there. We have the ATV, of course, got Stokes basket because we've made people out there that perish overheating and stuff. So talk about hydration, everything that they need to do in that aspect. Don't mix alcohol with any of the stuff that we talked about. Be careful on the trails, wear a helmet if you are on an ATV. So we got it divided into a lot of different sections, talking about that on the ATV side. And then we showed them all our ATV and the Stokes basket and all that good stuff on the boater safety side. We take care of the north part of the lake. So Stubblefield, Cagle, that area, we make a lot of rescues. And then unfortunately, we make a lot of body recovers. We have to do at some point in time. The person that's the incident commander has to make that call when we're going to rescue to recover. We went over that aspect with them and everything else and told them stories about that we made that boaters have an alcohol and that it doesn't mix. And then told them a story about when there was actually a student here. I don't even know if they were drinking it, but they were making a stupid decision. They decided to climb to a tree. The tree limb broke and Mr. Fellow members, and he fell and he hit a pond pump. And it was a quad here and lived for several years, and it was really, really close. And we hit part of the community, he was a football player and everything else, and really, really nice guy. So that's the kind of stuff. And the young man that was a new fireman here in New Waverly, or one of our first new full-time guys, was helping present it, and he was really, really good friends with him. So helped him do it. So it kind of brought just kind of a little personal experience with a kid, that former kid that did that. And then we talked about the bad accidents on the lake, the stumps in the lake, that the lake hasn't been here all along, that whenever the Corps of Engineers built it for Houston, it backed up, and whenever they did, there's still bulldozers down there. They built the dam, and flood came in. Most people don't know it. That's why all the tree stumps are there. That's the tops of the trees. So it just lifted up, and over 1 inch. I remember my dad and grandpa talking about it. Like, wow, this happened. 3 or 5 days. Now we have a lake out there and all the stuff. There's houses, there's excavators, there's bulldozers, and it covers the forest. So there's only certain spots that you should be skiing at and that you should be kneeboarding at. You need to know the lake before you go out there. They have maps and everything else. So we went over that kind of stuff, and then not be, try to talk about the alcohol reasonably with them. And then the last but not least is we talked about turn around, not drown. That's what the state has come up with on driving. Some of them are starting to drive in high school, and just as many rescues that we've made out on the lake or recoveries, we've made that here with whenever we have these flash floods. And it's crazy the amount of people, and that's the closest. I was telling some people this morning, that's the closest that we had to losing firefighters as whenever we went out on, I guess, Harvey. We almost lost 2 firemen. Like, they were almost died rescuing somebody, and it was a very, very bad deal. We picked people up hanging on to stop signs, literally got swept away, and they called them the stop sign. Had one that was holding on to the T-post and the barbed wire, and he wrapped his arm around the barbed wire, and that was the last thing he was doing before he went down there. So, and it's all because they went in when they weren't supposed to. So that's the kind of stuff we get on, and that's it. But it was a very, very good day, a very positive experience. Whoever got to be there, and it's awesome. Thank you.
Yes. And I appreciate Josh so much because he brings in his crew every year that we've done this, and brings an ATV and a boat and parks it out in the area on the campus, and the students just rotate through a session and they get a ton out of it. So because obviously at that age and in our community, those are the things that they're participating in. I did forget to mention, which you probably already saw, is that the attachment you have with your agenda is the flyer that we had created for the Safety Summit, and this was placed on the district website prior to the event. It was also posted on the high school Facebook page and Instagram page, so that we're trying to market it as much as possible. There was an edit. I was not able to get Double Days to commit this year. These vendors were committing or donating items for our speakers and volunteers in our, what I call the hospitality room. So McGill provided breakfast. McGill is one of our chief vendors that provides clinic supplies for all our campuses. So Fuel Max and Slots provided cases of water, and Keys and, is it Rolo? Am I pronouncing that correct? Provided drinks as well, and that was courtesy also of Josh. He helped us out with that. So, and then Dr. Hale and Central purchased lunch from Subway for our speakers and volunteers. So really appreciated all of those donations. That helps us since we really don't have a budget for that. But anyway, Ms. Robinson, right? I'm sorry. This guy, right?
So I was teacher at the high school, so I had a group, Citizens Catholic, where we paired up with another homeroom where we went through all of these seminars with our students throughout the day. So I got to experience a lot of the presentations like Mr. Slots, and it was awesome for me because I was learning too, especially the ATV stuff and anything like that. So the thing about it is that I got a lot of downtime with my homeroom, and we talked a lot about it because I have mostly freshmen, and I wanted real feedback because they were very overwhelmed. I think like they didn't know what questions to ask, they didn't know what to really think about anything. And I said, so which ones did you like hearing about? And then we went from there. And I got a lot of positive feedback about our local presentations. They loved it. They loved Mr. Slott's presentation. They loved the human trafficking because that's in our area, and Montgomery's right next to us. They loved hearing about, things that are about their environment. The learning about things that would actually what they felt related to them. And I will say, since you brought up the human trafficking earlier, it was such a unique way of giving that information because, as an educator, we kind of already know about the horrors of human trafficking and social media and how that all ties in. But for them, it wasn't just say, hey, don't talk to people you don't know. It was way more in depth. it was a unique way of presenting the information. The kids really like took stuff away from it. We talked about it probably about a week in my homeroom after that. It was great. So I just wanted to say that I think this was an amazing opportunity for our kids and our staff. Like I said, I think our teachers learned a lot from it too. And I didn't never had anything like this when I was in high school, and I wish I would have. Obviously, you know, we can always make improvements, and I think this was an awesome start to it. So I'm blessed to have been there. So thank you all.
Thank you. Any further comments?
The only insight I'd like to add is we had some presentations that were engaging with the kids and some that weren't. And with my particular group of kids, they need something. They need something to do or to move or, and two of the ones that we went to were where people stood at the front and just stood there and they read off the PowerPoint. And that was it. And so my kids were like looking around the room because, you know, we moved to different rooms and they would start talking to each other. There was one room that gave them little things to play with. So they were very much playing with the things and not even like looking at the screen or the people or anything. So it worked when we were engaging and the kids were engaged, but not when it wasn't.
Right. Good point.
But overall, it was good. And it's things the kids need to know, like what's the legality of like getting pulled over or you know, minor possession. Like they need to know those things, not just hear them from like the kids. They need to know. So that was insightful.
Great. Thank you. And Casey also was part of the presentation with our district attorney, Walker County District Attorney. So if you want to bring up topics or
the DA's office and I mean, we didn't really put anything together. The DA's office mainly spoke about the legalities of different charges, different aspects of charges. Towards the end, I mean, it got to where it seemed like from the very beginning, I mean, they weren't going to talk about it very much, but at the very end, talked about their cell phones, taking pictures, what you were saying about the fourth grade. So that was, it seemed to me, it seemed like it was a pretty hot topic, and I related some stuff that I've seen in the 4 years that I've been here. Of course, dealt with it on the sheriff's office side, but now that I'm in schools and I know most of these kids, and it opened up some of their eyes. I don't think they understood the legalities. 14-year-old sends it to a 16-year-old boy, and so now she's trafficked in child porn because she took a naked picture of herself. So yes, she could be charged. Depending on what that 16-year-old ex-boyfriend did with the picture. He took it around, started showing people. Now he's promoting child porn. So now he's committed a felony. If he sends that picture to anybody, I told this story because it happened 4 or 5 years ago, 4 years ago. I asked all the students in there, I said, how many of y'all have your airdrops on in here right now? And in just about every class, 3/4 of them raised their hand. And I said, okay, well, 4 years ago that happened in the lunchroom and 60 kids got child porn on the phone. And they all just kind of froze and like, oh my God, well, yeah. Depending on what you do with that picture, because if you send it, now you're promoting it. So you can be charged. So, it had helped. I think it struck a chord with most of them. Mm-hmm. I had a lot of kids come by and say, hey, thanks for the heads up, blah, blah, blah. I'm always available to them. They need to talk or so.
Right.
That's about it.
Great. Yeah, it was nice this year. We got to combine you guys as a good front for our students. The other thing that I wanted to mention as well is that we did create a QR code for our students to do an evaluation of the event. And so some of those evaluations results are kind of slowly trickling in on, and there were about, I think, 7 questions on the eval, and it ranged from what was your favorite topic to your least favorite topic? Do you have any topics that you would recommend for the next go around type things? So once I get all those results in and I cull them together, I can present that to you guys as well. So, but I just can't thank everyone enough for all of it's a big undertaking, as you can imagine, but I appreciate SHAC's support behind it. It is a SHAC sponsored activity. That's how it's on paper distributed, as well as just all of our volunteers and the staff at the high school they were amazing. And just as a point, I know it's 10-ish, 10:05 right now, and if you have to leave, please feel free to. I know I try to keep the meeting to an hour, but we got started a little bit late because of the technology, but we'll keep going. But if you have to step out, feel free to do that. And we'll be finished in just the next bit. So for our next report, I've asked Mr. Reese, he's the chair of our school safety and security committee, and they just had their last meeting this week. And so I asked him to give an update to you guys.
The School Safety and Security Committee is a compilation of staff and community members that's very similar to the SHAC committee. And we evaluate and look at safety around the school in all aspects. Every 3 years, we're charged with doing a complete school audit on safety that includes all of our science labs, our entrance areas, and so forth. And so our last committee, we just kind of looked at safe practices for this school year. And I was happy to report that we went through the school year without any major incidences. And I think one of the major players in that is the fact that we have secure entrances into all of our buildings. And the most recent one that we added was the intermediate school on last year. A person has to obtain authorization to enter a building from the front office. And a couple of years ago, when we increased our school resource officers, now we have full-time school resource officers traveling between the schools. The major concern that we've had for a number of years is this building right behind central office. And we've written letters to the city council. We tried to talk to people about that. Our school board members meet at night. Very often, Mrs. O'Hagan and Mrs. Chitwood are here by themselves, and that building is not secure. And that's a major issue. We will continue and bring it up, but until something gets done about it, we will continue and hound them about it. We meet 4 times a year, and as I said, the DAR tool will be put on by the School Safety Center this summer, and we'll have a couple months to do a complete overhaul and audit of our district. But as I said, we got through this school year without any major incidences, and so kudos to the staff and all the players that participated in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reese. Any questions? Fantastic, thank you. Then I've asked Mike to talk to us about, well, let me give you a little bit of background on what I've had a discussion with Mike in the past. At my previous district, I was concerned about our campus clinics, and in the event of, say, an active shooter event, what would we as clinic staff and nurses do in that situation? Because there's one way into a clinic and one way out. Sometimes the doors don't close. Sometimes we don't have windows that we can escape readily out of. Sometimes we don't even have a bathroom in the clinic, so it's just one single room, and where would you hide and that type of thing. So at my previous district, I had our SRO come around to each of our campus clinics to take sort of an inventory and a survey and give us suggestions as clinic staff on what to do in that situation, because if we can't, quote, escape, what are we going to do to protect ourselves and protect students who could possibly be in there at any point? So I've talked about that with Mike. We are making plans to go around to our different campus clinics to just kind of, again, take a survey of what suggestions we can give to our staff. But he also came up with a great idea, and so I'm going to let him take it and explain to y'all what we've done. what he's done.
I don't know, it was a great idea.
It is.
But one of the things that we looked at was that some campuses, some of the doors, they don't lock. The clinics are waiting.
Or you have to lock them from the outside.
Yeah, the actual key locks from the outside, so we don't have to throw it on the inside. So I got the idea. I'd seen it someplace else, and I started working with Mr. Wilson, and so we're still in the experimentation phase, but we're trying to come up with something that the staff can just slip over hinges that will keep the doors, at least give them time, like less caustic and stubborn, but so at least they might have time to do something to prepare themselves inside. Fortunately, Ms. Bostic, she's right next to the door, so hopefully she has time to get out. But if she doesn't, and the same thing goes with y'all, y'all have the back exit, but you have the back exit, unfortunately, is what would be considered to be a targeted area, because if someone is upset, that's probably where they're going to go attack first anyway. So, and same goes with Ms. Talbot. She's kind of in the middle of the hallway. So we're still working on it, but we're looking at something that can drop over there. The hinges and things are the only thing that they can do. We can't do anything about the door frames and stuff that we can sort them. So that's what it's all about, is creating a person who's attacking doesn't want to spend a lot of time in that. So that's kind of where we're at. In a nutshell, we'll still be working on that. Let's put something up there. So yeah, we're going to kind of get something in place for next year. So.
Yep. So Mike has been, like you said, working with Clint Wilson on developing this. I think it's a great idea. Again, in my previous districts, if you had a door that swung inside, sometimes the nurse would take a belt or some kind of cord and wrap, I don't even know what you call that metal thing that opens the door. But then the problem became, because we had one nurse who was actually shorter than me, so she had to have a chair next to the door and the belt, and cognitively think in a panic mode, I got to step up on the chair, I got to hang up, that. And some nurses had those things where you could bolt, I don't know, you could put it under the doorknob. But again, you've got to be prepared. You got to have all that stuff there and be able to think clearly to use it. With the hinge, I think that's great, because we can mount those somehow to the side of the door or to the wall next to the door, so that automatically you think, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And we tested it. It works. It's pretty impressive how something that simple really does work. The other suggestion Mike had given us was to have a baseball bat.
I had a sledgehammer.
Yeah.
A metal baseball bat.
Yes. Yeah. And I was told too, sometimes clinics are the best places, because we've got kind of sharp tools in the clinic, like scissors and things like that we use on a daily basis. And so we have some tools, makeshift tools that we can use as well to protect ourselves. So, but thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. See you, Mr. Geezy.
Sorry, thank you.
No problem. Thank you. So any other thoughts or ideas on what we talked about today, or any agenda items that you want me to jot down before we end? Again, I appreciate everybody's input. So our next meeting date, I've put here as tentative, because we do have some things that are, especially the curriculum is still kind of hanging out there. And we've, as soon as Ms. Brock and I get some good, solid, information and confirmation of things, then we do want to present it to you guys for further updates. So I've added it as either we might meet in person, we might meet on Zoom, or we might just communicate all by email. I would ask, if we do communicate on email, that I get a response from y'all, because it's helpful to have y'all respond yay or nay to what we're bringing up, because we've got to have a quorum when we do it by email. The sort of tentative things for the agenda, if we do have a meeting, would be, again, the sex ed curriculum. We're talking about if we need to update our wellness policy, and then again, if you guys have any agenda items you want me to put on there. So, and I think we're good to go. So again, I'm going to adjourn the meeting at 10:15, and appreciate all of y'all's time. Please get food as you walk out, so I don't have to lug it home. And thank you, Nadia. Appreciate you joining. Bye.
Yeah.
Did it stop, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.